Hi. This week was quite a paradoxical week. The full extremes of who we are, and I find that the more awesome beings are, the more the contrast at the other side can play around, and if we don't see this side, that side can take over. And it can get pretty dark. And considering the brilliance on this side, when it gets that dark, we don't feel like ourselves. So this week, it's called You Are Supported, or Supported. The interesting thing with that is that if you think something is good, good is supported. If you think something is not good is supported. You will be supported. So the paradox plays out, and if we could only just see the best in ourselves and the best in others, can you imagine the support that actually gives? So the paradoxical played out in several ways this week, and a gentler version of that is being able to change a need like this. I need this, whether it's a relationship or an item you're looking for, be it small or large, this need. And if the word need can be surplaced with prefer, I would prefer, all of a sudden it's a gentler, and it has more of an interactive play prefer. It's kinder. Unless, as it showed up this week, if you are intent to prefer to be nice in the face of abuse, but you prefer to be nice, then you need to do the prefer and bring it into a need. I have to stop this. So that again is paradoxical. Is it a need that is better with a prefer, or is the prefer something that really has a need attached to it? And it was really this week finding that sweet spot, that sweet spot that if we negotiate the paradox well, we can then look at the world in a way that is more neutral, and in seeing it supports how we label it, what we call it, because it will support that. And it's good to catch yourself sometimes with the labels you might be using. So the thing about this, though, was that why don't we feel incredibly loved? Because we are incredibly loved. And if we're not incredibly loved, patterns show up if we feel we're not incredibly loved. Because we are all incredibly loved beyond what we can conceive love even is. It's beyond words. And when that becomes more an acceptance in ourselves, we connect better to within, and that calmness arrives when that is not a question anymore, because you don't have to prove it, you don't have to do anything for it. It just is. And when that is, we can get over humps, This week, people had found humps, and in interpreting the humps, the hump became different. If we're progressing towards wellness, sometimes we can hit a hump, but if we feel that, right, I feel I can push through this. Because if we call it a hump that's impossible to get over, it's very different than it's a hump, but I know I can push through, and the growth that comes from that, which is, we kind of dialogued that last week a bit. how doing that creates so many benefits and skills that compound over time by giving it that type of approach. The other aspect is if we keep looking at the world and it doesn't yet feel normal to us, we can live a life of nothing's ever normal, because that which pulls us forward, if we feel what we're pushing towards is normal, it changes the picture completely. Rather than it's never normal, we get to the next spot and then the next thing is normal, and it isn't normal until that next spot, and we end up living in not normal. So to be able to see humps in the road as normal, there's less emotion about it. We go, oh yeah, that's normal, regardless of what shows up. It could be how the world is going, whatever it is. If you look at the world, you go, yeah, I'm not surprised, that's normal. Then you can approach it in a calmer, non-emotional way, because then you can go, given that's normal, this is my behavior in it, or this is how I neutralize that process, so that you become stable in your approach forward and you're not thrown around as much. In that stability, there are those who are amazingly stable with great capacity, but they haven't joined the dots yet of how capable they are. And unless you can join the dots in the capacity that you have, you're missing the ease of it. When I do sessions, and I'm sure many of you who you are practicing, you find ways of seeing or modalities that particularly work well for you. And I get a lot of information from the hands in terms of, communication, capacity of communication, whether it be mental or spiritual. And then there is that sense of accountability. And accountability is to share how you really see things so that the others can be informed by that and it can be discussed. So the communication to accountability to being productive, and then the capacity to see things as normal. A lot of stuff happens. I can't believe that happened. I go, that's a capacity. It's normal in the world to be able to see it as not surprising. It's not surprising that a spider eats a fly. And to see it as normal means you can approach it in a way that's less emotional and more, how can I interact with that? How can I see it so that there's a forward movement in it, and in a way stay on your own page with the approach of that. Now, some people have all those capacities. Not often, but it does show up. And what is interesting, when those capacities show up, the ability to join the dots is important, because if you can join the dots to that capacity that you have, it becomes very doable. It's like you approach life as doable. And of course, if you feel that life is doable, it will support you in that capacity that you see as doable. If you do not see it as doable, it will support it as not doable. So we create via our seeing and claiming of it as to what is supported. It's very powerful, really. And those that see that it is connected to a nothingness from which all things come. Nothing is a very full place. Out of nothing, I call it this. Out of nothing, I'm making it that. And the more we can see out of out of nothing, not out of history, not out of our experience, but out of nothing, we claim what it is, and that will be supported, is an enormous creativity and peace. And many, many people speak about that. They've been speaking about it since you know, that whole Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden, this whole capacity of how we enter into things. It is created by us and it is supported. So the brilliance of the people that showed up this week, in this vast contrast that showed up, that we really need to be very careful with. Because if we're extreme at this end of light and brilliance, we can paint ourselves in this corner, thinking that if it we really get to the bottom of it, of how bad it is, that will motivate us. No, it'll tie you down. It'll make it so impossible to pull yourself out of that corner. It is in the freedom of seeing and the freedom of action within the extremes, the brilliant extremes that we all are, that we find the freedom, not up this end, not up that end. And someone who I saw this weekend, it was incredible what was on her plate to look at, but with finding the genuine aspect that says, this I feel honest and clear about. And because I feel honest and clear about it, it feels like nothing to me. But in the nothing of the great generosity that was before her, there was a freedom when you find out what that is that you do feel the nothing about. For some people, throwing a huge party is huge, it's not a nothing, and for other people it is a nothing. So we need to find our own what is that nothing, because in that nothing lives the freedom, lives the capacity. So impatience showed up as the essence to read with you, and it's a bark flower. And the card that also came out was worthiness, so I'll read both to you. They kind of fit. So impatience has the negative qualities, and I know this has come up before in the past. Irritability, impatience, nervous. Everything done quickly. A relief for mental tension through frustration. Finishes sentences for the other person if slower. Accident prone through impetuosity. Prefers to work alone. Slow workers irritate. Mental tension through frustration and other pressures. These are all through seeing, and it will be supported. Positive is less hasty in action and thought, more relaxed, patient, tolerant, and gentle towards the shortcomings of others, and upsetting conditions. So gentle towards shortcomings of others and upsetting conditions. It's all in how we see it. Worthiness. Your worthiness is never in dispute, only your acceptance of it. You are worth more than you have allowed before. Now is the time to endorse your self-esteem. When you compare yourself to others, you will automatically use a linear scale, and yet your worth is not something to be measured. Your worth is boundless and universal. Feel it, and it will be supported. Much love.